Hi guys, I put out a request for some of your questions and cue tips. The response has been incredible, literally hundreds of questions, picking through some of the best ones and answering them, so hope you enjoy the answers and thank you so much for the input. AMAC wants to know the biggest reason for missing pots or easy pots. Well, I can tell you in my career, the biggest reason for me missing a pot would be changing my mind while I was on the shot, of the shot I was going to play. So for instance, if I was on a red and I was actually down playing the shot and I thought I'm going to play for the pink here, and at the very last minute, no, I'm going to play for the black. And without getting up and resetting, you miss the pot. And I missed more shots in my career for that reason than any other. Great advice would be, make sure you decide what shot you're going to play before you get down to it. Don't change your mind while you're down cueing, because as I say, that's a fatal error. Obviously, thinking about other stuff, you could be thinking about anything. You could be thinking about what you're going to have for dinner that night, and that causes you to miss. In my career, changing my mind was the biggest fault for missing anything. Matt Hilton wants to know the favourite frame that I won in my career. It's very difficult, obviously, to narrow it down to one. Obviously 147s are special, winning frames. The 147 I made against Ronnie O'Sullivan in the decider of that match was incredible. One of my favourite ones in terms of a clearance was the deciding frame against Jimmy White in the final of the World Championship. And Jimmy missed and I was about 40 or 50 behind, and I cleared up the last 5 or 6 reds to win. So under that kind of pressure to win the World Championship and clear up certainly goes down as one of my favourite frames that I ever won. Beyond Instrumental wants to know about my original cue, and this is obviously not the cue that I won 7 world titles with and 70 ranking titles. That was a Rex Williams Connoisseur, a power glide that I got when I was 14 years old. My dad paid about 30 or 40 quid for it, and it wasn't the best quality cue in the world, but it was the one that won all those titles. So after 9/11 in 2001, before that, we could take our cues on board planes. After 9/11, obviously we weren't allowed to, so we had to put them in the hold. So before, nowadays players put their cues in these ski tubes. I'm the same, and it protects them going in the hold. But in those days, we used to rely and hope that the ground staff would take them down by hand and put them in the hold. So I was in Thailand playing a tournament, checked in my cue and said, will you take it down by hand? They said yes. I had to fly from Bangkok to Heathrow to Scotland. When I got to Heathrow, there was someone to meet me who gave me a letter and said that part of my luggage was damaged. So straight away I knew it was a cue. Got to Glasgow, it was a one-piece cue and the case was basically in 2 pieces. So first thought, career over. Then when you sort of get yourself together, it's you have to go about trying to get a new cue. So I had cues made by John Paris, which I tried, and superb quality. But because my cue was not good quality, I found them difficult to play with. This now is, this is an accurate cue that I've been using since I retired. But yeah, the original cue was special to me. Who knows what effect it had on my career afterwards, but it was unfortunate end to that partnership. Question from Brian, all the way from Brazil, somewhere I've actually been to play snooker twice. And he's asking, do I like the shorter format tournaments, such as the 6 Reds recently in Thailand, the shootout, which is over 10 minutes? I do. I think there's room for every type of event. I think every sport gets boring if every tournament looked the same, it was the same format. So I really enjoy watching some of these quicker events. Whether I would enjoy playing them or not is a different matter. Do I think the shootout should be a ranking tournament? Not really, but it doesn't mean I don't enjoy watching it. I don't think it deserves a place on the calendar. So definitely I think there's room for different types of events. A question from Michael734 on where you should look when you're actually playing the shot, when you're potting a ball. Now, everyone's different here. It's something that's very difficult to teach. I myself am a cue ball player, which means that the last thing I look at before I strike the cue ball is indeed the white. Some players, they look at the object ball last. It'd be something that'd be very difficult to change, to teach actually. Early on in my career, Frank Callan was my coach, and he introduced a pause at the back of my backswing, and that was in order to make sure I had time to get my eyes back onto the cue ball before I struck it. It's not something that you can really change, I think. If you're an object ball player, i.e. you look at the object ball last, you can't really change or deliberately change to be a cue ball player, I don't think. But Ronnie O'Sullivan and I are both cue ball players, so that gives you a little bit of a hint the way we play. A question from Zorro, who is asking the top 3 most difficult players I've faced in my career. I've been fortunate in my career. I've come up against obviously the best of the 80s, Steve Davis, Jimmy White. If you're rated the top 3, Steve Davis was obviously very difficult. I lost to him about 16 or 17 times before I beat him the first. Then you come to the 90s and you have the class of 92. O'Sullivan is obviously probably the toughest player because when you missed, more often than not, he just cleared the table. Same as myself, that was his strength of his game, to put pressure on his opponents. So he would be the toughest in that respect, where you just couldn't afford to miss because you knew you'd lost a frame. I'll throw one in there, Cliff Thorburn. He was so tough to play against. I mean, his safety play was granite. And as a very aggressive attacking player, I found that very tough to play against. So yeah, in general, players that sort of were really good at safety, I found really difficult. Cliff Thorburn was right up there. ETW wants to know how I felt when I won tournaments, whether it was underwhelming. I guess you're asking that because I didn't really show much emotion when I was picking up trophies. I didn't cry, I didn't jump up and down, arms in the air, screaming. Basically because it was my job to win. And that's how I seen it. I put the preparation in, I put the hours of practice in order to get to the tournament, play my best and win the tournament. So when I won the tournament, it was like, okay, that's job done, when's the next one? So it was quite cold, it was quite matter of fact, but I think it's one of the reasons for my, consistent success. I would never get too ahead of myself or get too up after a victory because I knew next week or the week after there was another one, so I had to come back down to earth quickly. Underwhelmed is probably the wrong way to put it, but I just thought it was my job to win, and that's what I was there to do. Mini Snooker wants to know if you're having a bad day at the practice table, things are not going well, what do you do? If I was playing poorly, I would try and keep it simple. The lineup is a very simple exercise to do. Try and make it fun, it's not easy. If you're, I don't know what standard of player you are, but if you're playing every day, 3, 4, 5 hours a day, sometimes it's difficult to make it fun. And sometimes taking the day off can help if you're really in a rut when it comes to practice. But by making it simple, basically your cue arm loosens up and you get to pop more balls and you feel better. Don't practice anything difficult. Don't make anything too dull as a routine. But sometimes, yeah, just leave it, go home. Simon wants to know how much preparation and homework goes into me being a pundit on TV. The simple answer is none. I wing it. I basically say what I see. There's other pundits Alan McManus, who we've had on this channel, who are unbelievable at sort of dissecting the game and preparing, and they have all the stats ready. And it's something that I totally admire. And I do wish I had more sort of information of players to hand when I'm answering questions, but more often than not, certainly for the ITV ones, we've not got long to think of what to say. So if you've got to think about stats and everything, then the moment's gone. So I tend to concentrate on saying what I've seen, whether it be good or bad. I try and be honest. If it's good, I'll say it's good. If it's bad, I'll say it's bad. But yeah, in terms of preparation, 0. Peter Rumley asks, how beneficial are small tables in terms of your snooker? Well, I mean, you can see the length of this thing, 12 foot by 6. I started on a 6 foot by 3 foot, so a quarter the size of this. So certainly when you're an adult, it's probably no good. Getting someone young and obviously smaller into snooker, I think is a great way to start. That's how I started. It's how I would say probably 95% of the snooker professionals started on small tables, so they're hugely beneficial in getting you into the game. But when you develop, obviously you've got to come to the big table. This question asks what I think of the forms of pool. Have I played any of the other forms of pool? I tend to think as snooker as chess and pool as drafts or checkers, whatever you want to call it. The skill set is totally different. I do believe there's a different skill in pool. I've played a lot of Chinese 8-ball pool, Obviously, I've spent the last 10 years there as ambassador for that game, so I find that a very tough form, and probably the most difficult form of pool, I think, in terms of they use the bigger size balls with snooker size pockets, so it's actually quite tricky. It's not something, a game that I've spent a lot playing, I have to say, because I'm a snooker person. I like the tactical side of snooker. I like the control that you have to have with the cue ball. I've not played any 3-cushion billiards. That just looks too difficult. And I love to pop balls, so I've no interest in playing that, I'm sorry. Ross Townsend is asking, when is the right time to chalk your cue and how often should you do it? Well, I mean, you see the players on TV, we chalk every shot, basically. And sometimes even when, if you've been watching these Q&As I've been doing with players, when the players are actually talking, I'm still chalking my cue. Sometimes it's just a thing that players do. They've got the chalk in your hand, they've got the cue in your hand, so you chalk the tip. It's not necessary, I don't think, to chalk it before every shot, but why not? I mean, you may as well. So why take the risk of miscuing? Why put that risk there? You chalk your cue every shot. I mean, 1, 2, not too much. Some players, that, I don't, personally. This is going to get a bit boring. Some players go like this, some players go like this. I mean, it's, yeah, that's pretty dull. But yeah, chalk your cue every shot. Tom the Don is asking if there was a particular shot in my career where I felt really nervous. And nerves affect you in different ways. Towards the end of my career, when I was losing more than I was winning, the nerves are more of an anxious nerve because you're worrying about losing. When you're confident in the 90s, say before playing the final of a World Championship, I'd be nauseous in my dressing room. I'd be so nervous, but that would be like an anticipation, an exciting nerves. So there are two different kinds of nerves. In terms of playing shots in a match, I mean, looking back at obvious ones, the black ball against Williams in the Masters, you're really nervous before you get down to single shots that you have to pot. It's very difficult because you put a little bit of a twitch on the cue action. You never know when that's going to happen, so you can't really sort of get up and prepare again because you don't know when you deliver the cue if it's going to twitch a little bit under pressure. So throughout my career, obviously, I was able to handle nerves very well in general. But there was the odd time where nerves would get to you. So my advice would be to, if you can, get back off the shot. If you've got time, get back off the shot. Take a couple of deep breaths. I mean, that's putting it pretty simply. But yeah, good nerves make you play well. Bad nerves make you play bad. Guys, thank you so much for all your questions. Please keep them coming. Please keep liking and subscribing. And look forward to your questions in the future. Cheers, guys.